Two Stooges are at it again. This time we're dropping the front subframe and replacing it.
Oh, no. You gotta go back up with it.
And by the looks of it, we're complete pros, right? I think we're the definition of do-it-yourself mechanics.
Whoa. Damn. There's one ground wire there. Rusty bolts. Always fun. Alright. Oh yeah. Done.
Not only are we replacing the subframe, but we also scored a cleaner steering rack as a package deal with the purchase. Therefore, why not swap it in? Tearing down the subframe started off well.
Sweet! Washer. Off you come. Yeah, that's not the way it's supposed to look.
And here we go again.
That kick, you're gonna have to get the old sledgehammer out.
Harder.
Really?
Oh, it's seized in there.
Just hammer the fuck out of it?
Sure.
Take two. I'm trying to smash this seized, rusted in camber bolt out of the front lower control arm. Here we go. Let's do this thing. So we have pounded the hell out of the subframe to try to get these camber bolts out, and they're just not budging. Well, we got one out. The other one is completely just fused in there. It won't budge. And on the other side, the other bolt and bushing is seized up. So I don't know what we're gonna do. We're gonna put a bunch of heat into it later and pound on it some more. For now, we're just gonna raise the white flag and move on to putting the Hasport mounts on the other subframe. And we'll just kind of forget this happened for now. So we've got some hardcore Hasport mounts that we're gonna swap in. But for you guys who want more of a street setup, but want to reduce some play in the engine mounts, Blox makes these rigid collar rings that literally just slip over the existing subframe mounts here, which are rubber bush, so they have a fair bit of flex in them. And by dropping this ring over the center part and hammering it in place, it takes a lot of the play out of it. We've hammered it on the other side and tested it out, and there's like virtually no play left in it. So it's a really simple, elegant solution. We like it.
For those of you looking for a more race-intended engine mount, Hasport's got the solution with their billet-cut aluminum and urethane engine mounts. They're offered in 4 different compound options, ranging from a softer street material to an extreme full-race hardened urethane. We ended up choosing the U70A race option, which is still somewhat compliant for street use.
Another simple but effective mod from Blox that we're going to install are these steering rack spacers, and they correct for bump steer. All you do is you literally put them in the factory locations on the subframe. They supplied longer bolts. The rack bolts on there, and it shims the rack back up closer to the position it would be in at stock ride height. So it puts the tie rods back into closer to OE position, corrects for any bump steer geometry, better handling car. Super simple, and man, it's going to take us no time at all to do with all this out of the car. So we're ready to swap in our Canton Racing oil pan. We've decided to go with this because it increases oil capacity by about 1 liter, which is always a good thing to have. And more importantly, it has these trap doors in here. It's got 4 trap doors that trap the oil around the oil pickup. And what that does is prevent oil starvation in high G corners. So the oil is allowed in through the trap door to the pickup, and it's not allowed away from the pickup during cornering. So that's really the main reason we wanted this pan. It's also got an aluminum flywheel cover that comes with it. It comes with all the hardware to bolt it up. It's got some bungs on it for a temp sensor or a turbo drain line. So it's ready for just about any kind of application. We've been told that it increases oil temperature because it doesn't have the fins of the aluminum pan. But we've got a solution for that. We're going to swap in, well not swap in, we're going to install a Mishimoto oil cooler. So this way we'll have the best of both worlds. More oil capacity, oil baffles, and an oil cooler.
And here's what the stock oil pan looks like. There's very little, if any, baffling. Before installing the Canton oil pan, make certain to clean the mating surface free of any old silicone. Otherwise, you may end up dealing with a leak, and that's never an easy fix with the engine back in the car.
Look at that! That was some gold right there. Looks like I've done time in prison. I'm so good with a blade. We're just about to install our Canton oil racing pan here, but we've got to put some Honda 3-bond gasket maker on. However, I'm a Nissan guy, so I only use JDM approved Nissan gasket maker, and it's just as good. So let's do this. Oh, look how good it is. I don't know if the Honda bond comes out as good as this.
All jokes aside, make sure you use a quality oil-resistant silicone here. The oil pan doesn't seem to be fitting. That's because it has a built-in windage tray, and so does the stock one, which we forgot to remove. To our credit though, there were no instructions that came with the pan, so we couldn't have known. At least, now you do. With the baffle off, it fit like a glove.
You're going to want to torque your bolts to 8.7 foot-pounds, which converts to 120 inch-pounds. You've got a torque wrench like mine. And you're going to want to do it in a cross pattern. And you don't want to torque it right away. Just go around, feel it out, get it going, and then eventually, once you start tightening them all, push it to the 8 foot-pounds and you'll get there. So this process takes a little bit of time, so be patient with it, but it's pretty important. You don't want to over-torque this.
We're starting to feel a little accomplished here. With the Canton oil pan in place, we were able to bolt up the front subframe using the new Hasport mounts. The ASS2000 assometer level has just dropped a notch. This engine's starting to look better and better.
We have a couple of more jobs we want to take care of while the engine's out of the engine bay, starting with installing our Mishimoto oil cooler kit, or at least partially installing it by putting this sandwich plate on the back of the block where the oil filter screws on. It's got a couple of ports on it for oil temperature and oil pressure. That'll come in really handy later. And while I'm at it, I will show you the 19-row oil cooler. Oil goes in one side, comes out cooler the other. It's just that simple. And while we're at it, well, we've also got a Mishimoto aluminum dual-core performance radiator. We're going to get to installing this later, but we figured we'd show you right now since Mishimoto sent us all this at once. This rad is, I think, double the size of the stock rad, so it's going to improve cooling. It's got some bungs that are going to help with installing sensors for the gauges that we'll be getting to eventually. And we've got some
Rad hoses.
Yes, rad hoses. So we're replacing our old ones because they're cracked and they're kind of worn out with these new ones, which are gloss black, and that is the it thing right now for engine bays, I think.
You've got to have gloss black, absolutely, Peter.
And they're orange on the inside because that's actually a heat barrier. So it'll help, I don't know, keep the engine bay a little bit cooler, maybe? Yeah, we don't care about that. No, we're all about the gloss black. That's why we're replacing.
It's a new hose without cracks in it, and it says Mishimoto on it. So hey.
Have you ever heard of a Defense oil filter before? That's an ASS2000 quality oil filter right there.
This car's always full of surprises.
Isn't it? Don't worry, we've got a better filter for you too.
Mishimoto sandwich plate adapter bolts right onto the existing oil filter housing, making this the easiest task we've had all day. Well, that's if Dave can find the right thread.
There we go.
We've been nothing but impressed with K&N's performance oil filter as it features a high flow rate and excellent filtration. Just what the doctor ordered for a track car such as this. That's it. We're done with the engine and front subframe. Time to push it aside and move on to the back. Sometimes I think we do things the hard way just because we're suckers for punishment.
Rear subframe, not so good either. We have had a nightmare of a time trying to get everything off of it. All the lower control arm and tie rods are all seized into the subframe, so we're literally gonna have to like saws all those out somehow. The diff wasn't much better, this aluminum piece, which is really nice. Well, when we took the bolt out of it, it just completely tore the threads out of this. So this is now scrap, although we'll just probably run a longer bolt through it and put a nut on the back side of it. Anyway, way too much work taking this apart. Still lots more work to do, so yes. The ASS2000 is the gift that just keeps on giving.
Got the old grinding gear on here. Our rear subframe as our front one unfortunately isn't cooperating, as you've noticed, so I'm gonna have to do some grinding and get this job done. Before you all start complaining, yes, there's a less destructive way to do this. But since we have new subframes and bushings, this was the fastest method, and we're all about being fast here at Speed Academy. And what about the front subframe? Well, it received the same treatment. Rust, rust, and more rust. I had to destroy the subframe because of it. This wonderful bolt was so seized up that, like I said, I had to cut it out. That's done. Had to do the same thing with the other side. And luckily I was able to actually press one of the bushings out, but the rest of them are so seized that we're just gonna take this to a shop and have them take care of it, because I'm pretty much done having to deal with this kind of stuff, and we've got some nice hard race bushings, which Dave will tell you about in a second. But those guys will hopefully press them out for us and press the new ones in.
So what was all that hacking and slashing at the subframes for? Well, we want to replace all the bushings because they're beat up, they're seized up, we can't adjust the camber on half of them. So it's time for some fresh bushings, and we've opted for hard race, which make these OE style bushings with a hardened rubber. So it's about 50% stiffer than an OE bushing, but still gives you some compliance on the street, which is really nice for a car like ours that's going to see some street duty. But for the really hardcore race guys, they also make pillow ball versions of all these bushings. So you can go full spherical, you can go hardened rubber. We've gone hardened rubber everywhere, and we're going to press these in, or have the shop press them in, since PT seems to be tapping out.
Passport also makes some rear differential mounts that are equally as nice looking as their engine mounts. Aesthetics aside, these mounts will get rid of any slop in the rear drivetrain, which allows better and more predictable transfer of power to the wheels, and that's never a bad thing when you're looking at lower lap times. Another item that we're going to be replacing are the stock ball joints with a set of Buddy Club P1 Racing extended ball joints. So these actually are much taller than the stock ball joint and are going to fix roll center on our lowered vehicle.
So the S2000 is known for having a diff that overheats pretty quickly, and to address that problem, Evasive and their EVS tuning brand has built this much larger capacity diff cover. It actually holds 3 times as much fluid, so that gives you a lot more thermal capacity. They've also added provisions over here for a diff cooler. They've even put in a little NPT plug here for temp if you want that. So 3 times as much fluid, provisions for cooling. I think you could throw a whole bunch of horsepower at this now.
Replacing the cover requires removing the axle cups, which are held in by C-clips, so some persuasion may be needed. You'll need a chisel and hammer to pry between the diff casing and cover, but once you break that silicone seal, it should slide right off. A quick cleanup job to remove any old silicone and debris is kind of a smart idea. The EVS tuning diff cover can now be installed, and make sure you torque the bolts to 19 foot-pounds.
With the diff back into the new, less rusted subframe, that wraps up this episode, but there's lots more to come. So make sure you subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with Project ASS2000, because there's a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipeline.
So where are we at cost-wise? Well, the previous episode saw us install an AP2 transmission and spec clutch and flywheel, while this episode we knocked off quite a bit of aftermarket goodies. All in all, we're looking at a total cost of $5,044.20. That brings our running total to $15,419.20. About half of what we plan on spending to beat up on that pesky Jaguar F-Type at the track.
P1 Racing extended ball joints. Okay.
Buddy Club.
Buddy Club, yeah. I can figure that one out. It's just the rest of it that my brain is going to be like, P1 Racing ball joint extended.
Extendo!
Yeah. Extenderific.